Content warning. The following episode contains references to the following: violence, blood, death. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to MazanderCast,
a Persian podcast about myth, magic, and Mostahayar. I'm your co-host, Seth.
and I'm your co-host, Sarah. We're glad you're here with us for another episode. Oh no, so get your tea.
And your coffee, maybe some snacks while you're at it.
And let the adventure begin. But before that, honey, I know you can do this. Say it right. Tell me about that cucumber yogurt.
Mostahayar.
Oh, that's way better. I'll always tease you for that. But enough about that. Husband, we're going to keep on talking about the Shahnameh. This is kind of a longer storyline that we're talking about. So this is episode 2 of us kind of talking about Fereydun's sons. We will have a part 3. Now, before we get to part 2, do you remember what happened last time?
Yes. Fernando's kids.
No.
Fereydun's
There you go.
sons, his 3 sons, who he chose not to name for some reason, get hitched to 3 daughters who had an equally psychotic father who didn't name them. And then Fereydun just decides at their wedding that he's going to give all of them names, because I guess you could name somebody else's kids. But not before turning into a big spooky dragon and naming his sons based off of how they each reacted to his draconic presence.
It's a pretty good summary, I'd say. Yeah. No, there is no wedding present quite like your own name.
Yeah.
Now,
you got to know that they had names that they called each other.
surely they did, because I can only imagine when you meet your betrothed and you're standing right next to this other person and they turn to you and they say, "So what's your name?" And you say, "Heck if I know. What's yours?" "Heck if I know." You know? What do you call it?
Wow, your father's also a psychopath.
Man, we have a lot in common. This marriage is going to work just fine. Now, I will say, Seth, that was a good summary, but something pretty dire happened towards the end of the last episode. Do you remember? After he named them, what did Fereydun do?
I don't remember, actually.
He went to look at their astrology charts.
Oh, yeah, and it foretold doom.
Doom. And you made some predictions, and we're going to see if those predictions come true today. So, let's continue on today. We're going to find out what happens now that Fereydun knows the troubling futures that have been predicted for his sons. He decides not to tell anybody about what he's learned. He decides to keep it secret. I guess he doesn't want to cause a panic, or maybe he's hoping, if I ignore it, it's going to go away and it's not going to happen.
Doesn't work like that.
It never works like that. If there's a problem, guys, please face it down, because you're about to find out what happens if you just completely ignore it. But anyways, he continues like there's no problems. Instead, what he does is, now his sons are married. They've come back home. He decides they are ready to rule, but who's going to be the next ruler in his kingdom? That's the thing. He has 3 sons. Who do you think should be the ruler, Seth?
I'm going to guess it's going to be the eldest.
The eldest.
That's the traditional way to go about it.
Traditionally, that is the way he should go.
What did he name his kids again? There was Salm Iraj, and
Iraj was the youngest. So the middleest brother is the one you're trying to remember.
Yes.
Tur. Yes.
That's it.
So Salm, Tur, and Iraj are all eligible to become rulers. And like you said, traditionally, you would let the oldest become the ruler.
The most experienced, the one you probably groomed to be on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What he does instead is he decides, I'm going to split up my kingdom evenly between my 3 sons, so each of them gets a portion of the kingdom.
But who's going to get the best portion?
Well, what do you consider to be the best portion?
I don't know, the one that makes the most money, I would imagine.
Well, let's see how they split it up, and then I'm going to ask you that question again. He gives Salm the lands to the west, which is basically the Anatolian Peninsula, and it's not really into Europe, but it's the western part of the Persian Empire. Tur gets the land of the Turks. Now, it's not like you're thinking modern-day Turkey. This is more the part that's like Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and he also gets China. So that entire region, it's basically the eastern part of the Persian Empire at the time.
China must have been smaller back then.
It was China and Mongolia.
Jeez.
That's all of the east, and it's still part of the Persian Empire in the Shahnameh. And it's also called the land of Turan.
Turan.
Yes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Iraj gets the central part of Persia and the Arab kingdoms.
Which is Iran. He
Yeah.
gets Iran.
You made that prediction, is Iran named because of Iraj? Technically, no. But it is kind of interesting that Iraj gets Iran and Tur gets Turan.
Does Salm get Salman?
Huh? Salm gets Anatolia.
I'm ending my friendship with Salman.
So yes, this is the way all three of the brothers get a portion of the kingdom. So who do you think got the best deal?
I'm going to guess Iraj.
And why?
Just a feeling.
Just the feeling, yeah.
Just a feeling, yeah.
So yeah, Fereydun divides the lands just as I explained it to you. He tells the sons to go to their new kingdoms, and they all kind of take a portion of the army, along with servants and the like, and they go set up in their own kingdoms and have their own palaces. Except Iraj, he stays where he's at. So Salm sets out to the west to claim his sovereignty, and they crown him the king of the west. Tur goes to the Turan lands, and there is crowned the king of Turan. Iraj stays in central Persia. He gets the crown and the sword of the kingdom. He's crowned king of Persia. And the brothers, they rule their lands in harmony for quite a long time, and they continue the just rule of their father before them. So everything's going great.
Great.
For now.
Yeah.
As you know, this is not going to last very long.
It never does.
Fereydun grows old in his years, and he's enjoying retirement, but he is getting a little bit weaker in his old age. Meanwhile, his sons are getting stronger. And that's not the only change that's coming over them. Salm is over off in the west, enjoying ruling his lands, but as time goes on, he starts to feel like he deserves more. And his greed for power starts to change him. He starts wishing that he had been the ruler of Persia and not Iraj. He fumes and grumbles about it for a long time before he eventually reaches out to Tur and sends him a message asking him if he doesn't think that, they as the older brothers kind of got the short end of the stick. Like, he was the rightful heir to all of the lands, and then if something happened to him, Tur should have been next. And yet, the land of heroes was given to the least worthy of the brothers, Iraj. This is his thought process. It's just, yeah. And Salm basically complains that there was no wisdom in their father's choice, and he had done him and Tor wrong. Fereydun had just done his two older sons dirty, and didn't care about them and didn't really love them.
This was the man who didn't name them for, most of their lives up to this point.
That's fair, but that was equal between all three of them. He didn't say, you get a name and you two just sit tight.
What if he secretly did that? Or no.
Iraj, what, father? No, nothing, son. You don't have a name. What?
Or worse, he named all of them, but he didn't tell the other two what their name was.
Oh my God.
And said it had to be a secret.
Listen, I'm not going to tell the other two, but your
Your
name is Salm.
Salm.
You're Salm.
You're Iraj.
Tur, don't you tell anybody you have a name yet, especially for you, son.
It's just you.
No, Fereydun's not doing that. He was just a psycho father. Come on. So, Tur hears this message. And let's remember, he's not the smartest of the three brothers. He is, after all, the one who said, I can totally face down a giant dragon by myself. But he hears the words of his older brother in this message. And in his vanity, he takes those words to heart. And he starts to get mad, too. So he sends a reply back to Salm saying basically that he agrees that there had been an injustice done upon both of them, and that Fereydun had deceived them when they were young and, naive.
And nameless.
And nameless. And now that they were older and wiser, he kind of understood that Fereydun had set them on this path where they needed to seek vengeance on the injustices done upon them. So he recommends that he and Sal meet up and they discuss a plan to figure out what to do next. So they do. I don't know where they meet, but they find a way to get
some
together.
Shadowy corner of the empire.
Some deep, dark, mysterious place. But they meet up and they decide that they're going to send a message to their father. So they bring this priest forward and they say, we need you to be a messenger. Send this message to Fereydun. And in the message, they basically tell him that first off, they wish him well. And then they remind him that he's getting old and his youth is behind him. And meanwhile, his sons are left to spend their youth dealing with his problems.
Jeez.
Fereydun was given all the earth to rule, and he has acted unjustly towards his sons. He favored one of them and gave him the sovereign crown, while he cast out the other two sons like they were nothing. And
what a bunch of brats.
Right? Like, I can't imagine this priest is sitting here watching these two men with crowns on their heads saying, it's not fair. We don't get to be kings. Your Majesty.
Roche isn't even that cool. I mean, his name.
It's like, they have crowns. They have kingdoms. They are kings. It's equally divided. What is going on? Why are you like this?
You always want what you don't have.
I guess, but just, jeez. It makes me so mad. Anyway, so they kind of go on this rant. They declare that they are not less than Iraj by birth. They deserve much more than he does, and God was never going to see Fereydun in a favorable light because he took better care of one son and despised the other two.
Jeez.
And then they demand that Fereydun removes the crown from Iraj's worthless head and banish him from the kingdom. And if he doesn't do this, then they were going to gather up their armies and they were going to go to war.
I would love to see what Fereydun has to say about this.
You do, huh?
Yeah.
Because it's about to happen.
Nice.
This poor priest has to now send this message to Fereydun, the most terrifying man in all the kingdom. Because, again, he's got the reputation of killing a tyrant.
He glows.
He glows.
He glows with heavenly light.
Yep. And
he's a
has
sorcerer.
To saddle on up with this message of hatred and bitterness and anger from these two spoiled brat men.
You see? Do you see that, Mr. Priest? That's the giant snake-headed man that I slew.
See that? There's plenty of caves up there in Damavan. I got plenty of other places to put
see
my
that
enemies.
mountain? I stuck him up there, and he's still in there.
Anyways, the priest travels this long journey to Fereydun. And he arrives at the palace where he sees everything is peaceful and beautiful. And Fereydun has all these animals out. He has lions and leopards on one side. He has elephants on another side. And all the guards who are there, they just seem to gleam with this glowing light. And the priest thinks, oh my gosh, I think I just walked into a celestial court or something. It's almost like paradise.
He did.
And Fereydun comes to greet him, and he's still as strong as ever. Even though his hair has gone white and he's a little bit older, he's still big and tough. And he greets the priest and invites him to sit, and he's so excited because he's like, you've brought word for my sons. I miss them so much. How are my boys doing? Are they healthy?
Aww.
Are they doing well? Now, hold on. How are you? I know that was a long journey. Are you doing okay? You sit right here
Don't
and you
do
rest
this
up.
to me, Sarah.
No, this is Fereydun just super excited to hear about his sons and also making sure that the messenger guy is doing okay.
Please tell me this guy is going to be okay.
Yeah, this poor guy, this priest is he's sitting there looking at this doting father who's being so nice to him and just wants the best for his two sons. And he's like, I have to give him this angry message. So he kind of sucks it up. And the priest warns Fereydun that, yes, your sons are healthy and well, but they're really angry and they've delivered a pretty harsh message. I'm so sorry I have to say this. This is not how I feel. Please don't get upset with me. And these are the direct words of the princes. And then he repeats the message.
Mm-hmm.
And basically everything I told you. Whine, 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 whine.
I can just picture like his heart breaking. You can see in his eyes.
Fereydun is furious.
I bet.
So, first he assures the priest that he has no need to apologize. And, he has foreseen this happening with his sons.
And then he ran out to each of them to give them like a good old-fashioned celestial spanking, right? Bring the hand of God on those cheeks.
Would have solved so many problems. But no, that is not what he does. Because they are grown men. Although this is Fereydun. He could have done
Yeah,
what
he would
wanted
have.
to.
You know he would have.
He then asks that the priest return a message to his sons. And so usually, Seth, I give a summary of what the text says, because when we do these things, when we read the Shahnameh, I read 3 different translations to kind of understand that to make sure I got the core message right. But there was the way that it was translated in the Kindle version was so beautiful that I have to read this quote. Okay, so this is from the Kindle version of the Shahnameh. So Fereydun, this is his message. Tell those 2 corrupt and worthless fools, those 2 whose brains have been led astray by Ahriman. The king is pleased that you have shown your natures and says your greetings are worthy of you. You have forgotten the advice I gave you, and no trace of wisdom remains in your minds. Have you no fear or shame before God?
Whew. Whew. I think
Can you feel the burn from that?
So
should I go out and get some ice for us real quick? Because that burned us.
So on like the rankings of things your parents can say to you that like defeat you, you've got I'm not mad, I'm disappointed, and then like light years above that you have this. Good God.
Your greetings are worthy.
I feel ashamed, and I'm not even his son.
We're not even the ones whining at him, and we're like, oh my gosh.
I can feel the parental rage in that.
We just need to call our parents after we record this and just apologize for
I'm
whatever.
sorry. For what? I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Mazaret Macham. I want forgiveness. So he goes on in this message to tell them that he wanted to divide the kingdom equally between his 3 sons. He did not favor one over the other. He spent a long time deciding who got which part of the kingdom, and the entire time he was making these decisions, he was keeping the fear of God in his mind. He was making sure that he was being reasonable and true and just to his sons when making this decision in the way that God would want him to be.
Mm-hmm.
He then tells them that Ahriman has filled the space in their minds and hearts to make them behave this way, and he asks if God would look kindly on their declaration of war against their own brother, and would God like all these terrible things that they're saying? And he tells them that, there's consequences in choosing to do evil, and that they're basically coveting things that are only of this world. The throne, the kingdoms, these are things of
material
earth.
things.
These are material things. And you have to really focus on the things that are beyond this realm. So, he tells them that he's getting old. He's tired of war, and he begs them to heed his advice that these treasures are dust of the earth, and if they turn on their brother like they're asking to do, that makes them just as
surrender their
worthless.
souls to Ahriman.
Pretty much. And he begs them turn back to the path of God and consider what their fate is going to be on Judgment Day, because their words and their actions are going to have a great effect on them. It's like, this is way more than just you're focusing on material things, my sons. You really need to be minding what you're saying and what you're thinking about doing. So he says all this in the message, asks the priest to give this back to them. And meanwhile, Fereydun goes to Iraj. And he tells him that his brothers are planning to go to war with him because they don't like that he got the throne of Persia. And he says, Iraj, you should probably get your armies together. You should probably get them ready to defend our kingdom. But Iraj is a pretty chill guy. And he tells his father, Dad, life is fleeting, and we're all fated to leave this world eventually. This world has seen so many men and women wear the crown, and they'll see many more after me. This is not important. It's not important for me to be a king in the grand scheme of the universe, so I'm not taking up arms against my brother. I love them a lot. I don't think I need to defend the throne from them. If they want the throne, they can have it. I don't care.
Oh, so he's like the opposite then.
Right?
He doesn't care at all about the material part of it.
No, he loves his brothers. And he reminds Fereydun of how Jamshid had been driven away from the crown and the kingdom because of his greed. And the way that he ruled, and he was so important. And then at the end of it all, because of his greed, he ended up dying alone.
Mm-hmm.
And Iraj has faith that if he and his brothers can find a way to make peace, then it's going to be okay. And he really thinks they can do it. And Fereydun is like, kid, you're asking for peace against two people who are literally planning to go to war with you. You're asking to seek reconciliation with people who are already picking up arms. Mm-hmm. This just isn't smart. You can't just sit here and let it happen. So he encourages Iraj to take the initiative, go speak to his brothers, maybe take a small handful of troops with him as an entourage. And Fereydun is also going to write a letter to Salman Tur. He's like, okay, I'm going to respect that Iraj wants to try and make this right. Let me do what I can to help him along. So in this letter, Fereydun tells Salman Tur that he has accomplished a lot of things in his life, but now that he's old, he doesn't want crowns or riches. He just wants the health and happiness of all of his sons. He tells them Iraj was really disturbed by their anger towards him and that their little brother loved them so much. He had never spoken an ill word against them and that he was choosing to keep his relationship with Salman Tur over his own throne. And he was now writing to see them to find a way to reconcile. So Fereydun asks his sons, treat your younger brother with respect, find a way to make peace, and once he had stayed with them, return Iraj back to Fereydun safe and sound. This is everything he put in the letter. Mm-hmm. So Iraj takes this letter and makes his way out with basically takes the smallest group of people acceptable as an entourage and goes out a few days' travel to where Salman Tur are camped out with their armies.
Mm. Doesn't end well, does it?
Well, it starts off okay. Iraj, he goes up and he is a little tense at first because,
Because they want to kill him, yeah.
Yeah. But as he's riding up to them, he sees his brothers smiling at him, so he relaxes and he goes up to them. And they all exchange greetings pleasantly enough, but Salman Tur are putting on an act. They're not actually happy. They're just pretending to be happy in front of Iraj and in front of their troops and everything. But they're still angry and they're still hateful. And bless Iraj, he has no clue about it, so he thinks everything is fine and that his brother's anger must have been over-exaggerated. Dad was overthinking it. This is fine.
So two-faced.
I know. So the three brothers are making their way back to the tents so that Iraj can rest after his long journey. And as they're passing, Salm overhears the soldiers muttering to each other, and he's listening carefully. And they're basically saying, wow, look at King Iraj. He's so, he's so amazing and impressive.
Ooh,
and wow,
no.
He looks like such an amazing person. This guy shouldn't be just a king. He should be an emperor. Wouldn't it be great if he ruled everybody? Man, I would love to have him as a ruler.
Oh, no. That's a death sentence right there.
This doesn't sit well with Salm at all. He is fuming, but he keeps on that two-face. So Iraj goes to his tent, and Salman Tur, they meet again later on, and Tur's like, hey, what were the soldiers mumbling about? And Salm tells him, too, about everything that they said, and Tur is also just not having it. They're both really angry. Like, even their own soldiers think Iraj is so great. So Tur says that these men are only going to see Iraj as their king now, and so these two brothers only have more hate for him. Nobody likes us.
There's only one way to solve this.
Right?
War.
So they spend the rest of their night plotting, and the next morning, Salman Tur, they go to Iraj's tent, and Iraj sees them coming. He runs to greet them and invites them in because the sweet, pure boy still loves and believes in his brothers. Sweet cinnamon roll, too good for this world.
Yes.
So once they're in the tent, the brothers confront Iraj, and Tur basically asks why the youngest one got the most important crown, and that it wasn't right, and he berates Iraj, and calls him their father's favorite, and he's unworthy of the Persian crown, all this nonsense. He just goes on. And how do you think Iraj responds to all of this?
If you want my kingdom, you can have it. As long as I get to keep my brother's love.
Pretty much, yep. That is exactly what he says. He listens to...
He's being too noble.
He's listening very calmly to Tur complaining, and he says, listen, in order to be happy, you just got to calm down a bit. I don't want Persia. I don't want the crown or authority over any country. I don't want the crown of Persia. I am freely offering it to you, my brothers, to both of you. I don't want you guys to hate me. I don't want to fight you. I love you guys so much. I just don't want greed and glory to lead my heart. I just want us to be brothers.
And they kill him.
Yeah. Tur hears his brother's words. He just gets more annoyed. Like, he's already furious about a soldier's words. He's already worked himself up into a fury. So even as Iraj is trying to calm him down and speak peacefully, it just sets him off. He jumps up. He picks up his chair that he's sitting on and he crashes it down on Iraj's head. Throws Iraj to the floor, gets him seriously hurt, and he's on the ground begging Tur to stop, says, have you no fear of God to do this thing? And he begs his brother, don't become a murderer. Don't let your soul be corrupted by murder. He promises to leave. He'll banish himself from the kingdom, anything to keep his brother from turning from God, turning from their father, corrupting a soul, becoming a murderer. And as he's saying all this, Tur gets out a poison knife from his boot and kills Iraj. He cuts him from top to bottom.
What the heck?
Yeah. And Tur gets a poison knife, cuts him down. Iraj dies in a pool of his own blood. Then, if he thought it wasn't bad enough, Tur cuts off Iraj's head, empties it out, has it filled with camphor and musk, and sends it to Fereydun with a message that basically says, here is your precious favorite son. Try crowning him now. This branch of your family tree is gone.
Good God.
And the deed is done. And they go back to their kingdoms. Like, Seth, can I just say, this is like one of my least favorite parts of the Shahnameh is this story. It's so messed up. Like, even as he was being attacked for for everything that he was doing, all he was focusing on was trying to save his brother's soul. Realizing that this is going to corrupt my brother's soul, nothing else is more important than saving my brother, and still they murdered him.
Grisly too.
Yes.
With hatred.
And then mutilated his body afterwards. Like, I know we said we would be a family-friendly show. There are words I want to say that I'm not going to. And in fact, Seth, you're going to cut this part out because we're not putting this in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was being, mistreated or anything. It was just two people got too greedy. Okay. I'm done with my rant. You ready to continue this sad story?
It's going to be fun to edit.
I'm sorry. I had to get it out. I'm emotional. So anyways, back to Fereydun. Because he's been watching and waiting for Iraj to return. He even has his army standing out to watch, and when it gets close to the time that Iraj is supposed to return, they start preparing a celebration for him. Feasts, drums, dancers, setting up his court area. But instead of Iraj, a messenger on a camel comes. And this messenger is sobbing and crying as he rides up to them, and as he gets closer, they see he's bringing a coffin with him. And when he comes up to Fereydun, who's sitting on his horse, the man is crying too much to even get the words out. So Fereydun reaches over. He opens up the coffin. He removes the silk, and it reveals Iraj's head. And remember who Fereydun is. This is we've watched his origin story. This is the young kid who infiltrated an evil tyrant's palace and freed an entire nation. And he's the strongest warrior of his time. And when he saw his son's head in the coffin, Fereydun fell from his horse and collapsed on the ground. And yeah, I'm crying. He and his soldiers are overcome with grief, and I'm overcome with grief. I'm gonna keep going.
He had to see his little boy's head in a basket.
I know. And just the entire palace, they had been spending up to that moment preparing for a grand celebration, and it's just thrown into chaos. And people are screaming and crying and clawing at their faces and their clothes in agony. I think we mentioned before that when the weeping happens in the Shahnameh, it happens
hard.
It's huge.
People are drowning in tears.
Pretty much. And, the last time we saw something like this, it was Qumars, who was mourning the death of his son Siamak, which is, I think we said was like the first death from battle or something like that. And,
yeah.
But I don't know. I think we've seen this kind of treachery unfold, and we saw the injustice of it. So I think in many ways this death hit me way harder than Siamak's, because we follow the journey of his father for all this time. We saw that nothing shook Fereydun. Nothing.
And to know that it was the same corruption that broke his ancestor Jamshid has now infested his family once again.
Yeah, and to see him go from this small infant, lead his people to victory, and see this time of peace is now being delivered the head of his youngest child by his 2 older sons.
This is why you give your kids the magic cow milk.
Magic cow milk makes everything fine.
Makes you a good boy. Iraj got some. That's why they hated him.
Oh, is that why?
Yes.
Fereydun is sobbing and cradling Iraj's head as he goes through the palace, and they're draping everything in black and indigo, and he makes his way to a garden that's been set up for Iraj, and where Iraj had once held court, and now it held an empty throne among all these trees and water pools. He basically sets this garden on fire and upends the flower beds, and he even sets fire to the cypress trees, which you remember is big symbolism. And as everything is burning, he's just holding Iraj's head in his arms, and he begs to God to look upon the slaughtered and innocent, and to set Salman Tour's hearts aflame for their murder, and he demands they see nothing but sorrow for the rest of their lives and leave them in agony, and he prays that a child will be born from Iraj's lineage who can rise up and help Persia seek vengeance for the death of their king. And only then would Fereydun depart from this earth. He basically swears, I am not leaving
I won't
this
die
earth.
until I get some revenge for my kid.
Pretty much. So Fereydun sits and weeps there for so long that the grass grows around him. He basically sits out in the garden. He'll lay down and sleep and then wake up and just sit there. I kind of hope that they eventually let him bury Iraj's head. But he basically doesn't move from that spot until many months later, he is told that one of the women in Iraj's harem, a woman named Mah Afari, was pregnant. And Fereydun starts to find joy in life once again. He has a grandchild, and he really hopes the child will grow to be the one who could help him fulfill the vengeance that he wants towards Salman Tur.
Wow, he got so sad he made a prophecy.
So Mah Afarid gave birth to a daughter, and she was the very spit image of Iraj. She looked exactly like him. Her mannerism was like him. And Fereydun sort of came back from his grieving, and he dotes on this granddaughter. And he raises her with great care and tenderness. And then when she is of marrying age, she was wed to a man named Pashang.
Hold on. Did she get a name?
No.
Oh, okay.
At least not in the Shahnameh.
Oh.
And that's all women are good for. Marry them off and make them have babies. You know what, Fereydun? If you wouldn't be so sexist and worried about sheltering her, you could have let her lead the fight for vengeance. Give her a sword. This is the one thing I don't like about the Shahnameh.
Yeah, the great thing about swords is it doesn't matter what your gender, you die from having a sharp piece of metal put in you.
Right? So let all of them figure out how to wield it. But in the Shahnameh, and this is this is a fault among many cultures, old stories, but they don't let the women have as many battle roles and stuff. There are more marrying roles and pretty roles, and, you know, maybe on occasion they can have magic, but they never get to fight. And, like, I don't know who this nameless granddaughter was, but she could have been the one who sought vengeance for her father's death. She could have. Except the Shahnameh and so many of us, we could fight too! If someone told me that this is how my father died, you better believe I would be picking up a sword.
Yeah, all kinds of random folks in this book get names, but she doesn't.
Right?
She seems like kind of a big deal.
But she's not. Instead, she gives birth to a big deal, which is, I guess, all that we're good for in this story. I will continue on. Someone give me a headcanon where she's the one who leads the Vengeance Pact. Oh yeah, I guess we can't pick up swords. That wouldn't be ladylike. But this is the thing. If we had more women warriors in the Shahnameh, I could maybe name my daughters after them. I have yet to find any women warriors, and I want that. I want that.
Well, you've got some quick tangent.
Quick tangent.
We will get to these characters eventually, but there are like female warriors in Persian mythology.
There are a few.
Maybe not in the Shahnameh specifically, but you've got like Gorda Farid.
Yeah, Gorda Farid, Banu. We'll get to them, yeah. And then we got modern day Persian heroes like Maryam, that famous mathematician.
And your mom.
My mom. My mom is a hero. Anyways, rant done. A few years after Farid's daughter and Pashang are married, she gives birth to, drumroll please, a son. Yay! Because if it was a daughter, they would have just married her off too. I'm sorry, is my bitterness showing?
What do you call it? Dudu Tala? I said it wrong, didn't I?
I'm not correcting you.
Yeah,
Bless
you never
your heart.
will. I thought I could get you on this podcast.
This baby is named Manusher, and he is the grandson of Iraj and the great-grandson of Fereydun. And, wouldn't you believe it, just like his mom, Manusher is the spitting image of Iraj. And Fereydun is delighted. So he takes this baby in his arms and he prays to God that this boy would become strong and noble and that he would be the one to seek vengeance against his great uncles. And that, my dear husband, is where we will end today's episode. The next time we get together, we're going to learn about Manusher and how he grows up. Any predictions for this sprightly young boy?
Yeah, this boy is gonna kick some butt, I imagine. he's gonna have a glowing halo, and he's gonna be just like his great grandpa.
I sure hope so.
Except maybe he'll name his children when they're born.
Maybe he'll be a little bit more level-headed. Maybe he'll have more of Iraj's sort of mindset.
I am kind of curious about what's happening with the kingdom during this time. Did Tur and Salm kind of take over during all this?
They didn't. I think they mostly just wanted to... It wasn't about the crown so much as what Fereydun did to them.
Oh.
So once they killed Iraj, you're like, we're good. We'll go back to our kingdoms. We taught you a lesson. We took your most favorite.
Oh, wow. They're not even going to take it?
Fereydun basically steps in as the role of king until a proper heir is brought forth from Iraj's seed.
Okay. So this is the heir then.
This is the rightful heir.
This is the guy who's going to become the king.
The girl wasn't good enough.
And so I imagine that when he gets a little bit older, he's going to be a real thorn in Tur and Salm's side. Mm-hmm. They're going to see this kid who looks just like their kid brother. And they're going to be like, must murder.
I am looking forward to next episode because after all the garbage we had to read about here, I am ready for some vengeance myself.
I could go for some payback.
Let's get it.
That's probably not very godly, but you know what? Vengeance!
Vengeance! I'm ready for it. Also, I'm also ready for our Roll for Wisdom segment. Seth, you got anything for us today?
Yeah, I thought I'd talk about a couple of Persian monsters.
Okay.
You and I got on the subject of Persian horror movies and Persian ghost stories recently and how, neither of us are really that familiar with what passes for horror in
here's the thing,
Persian culture.
I don't, like, you asked me this, you asked me if there's any horror stories or monsters, and thinking about it, my mom never talked about it. I've never heard anybody, like, sharing ghost stories or, horror stories or anything like that, whereas we do that all the time in America. We have so many ghost stories and horror stories and stuff, but I don't see it that much in Iran, and I don't know if it's, like, a superstitious thing where you're like, don't talk about it, or you're gonna summon them, or if it's just that they didn't have the vocabulary to explain it to me, or I didn't have the vocabulary to keep up with those stories. But I never had anything like that shared to me.
Yeah, maybe you just haven't met, the type of people who are into that kind of thing.
Yeah. Hey, if there's any Iranians out there and you have, like, good horror stories or scary stories, please share. I would love to know.
Yes, I would too, especially.
Yeah.
I've been on a big horror kick lately, so I kind of wanted to look into some Persian ghost stories.
Okay, well, tell me what you got.
So I don't have any ghost stories that I'm going to tell, but I will tell you about I talked to you a little bit about these beforehand. Could you help me pronounce this one again? Bakhta?
Bakhta.
Bakhta.
That would be my guess.
The Bakhta is a Persian permutation of a very common mythological ghost that is a sleep paralysis demon, or a night hag,
Okay.
or a succubus.
Okay.
That has a bit of a different connotation, but it's basically a ghost that sits on your chest as you sleep and tries to strangle you as you sleep.
That really does sound like a sleep paralysis monster.
Yeah, but this one is a little bit more whimsical in that it causes you to be paralyzed, but if you can overcome the paralysis and grab its nose, that it has to show you the location to a buried treasure.
Is this a leprechaun? Is this a Persian leprechaun?
It is. It's just a lot more terrifying. It's been known to show up in a lot of different forms, just like most sleep paralysis, hallucinations.
Okay.
But typically it's depicted as either a demon with like black skin and wide open eyes and mouth, or an old woman with like night black skin and white hair and like a terrifying laugh.
So a faceless old woman?
Faceless old woman.
Who secretly lives in your home?
As somebody who suffers from sleep paralysis on occasion, I can confirm it's about that scary.
Now, have you encountered one of these creatures, a Bakhtar?
We can talk about this some other time.
Okay,
I don't think I want to talk about.
Let's talk about the next one then.
Let's talk about the next one. This one's a little less scary and a little more whimsical. I didn't know this, but the manticore, the mythical beast, the manticore, originated in Persian mythology.
Oh, really?
And for those of you who don't know what a manticore is, it's a large predatory beast from mythology. It has the head of a man, the body of a lion, and a tail like a venomous scorpion's, with spikes or quills like a porcupine running all the way down it.
That's really cool. I did not know that was a Persian creature.
It occasionally has some... I didn't either. I thought it was a Greek creature, but it turns out that the Greeks imported it.
The last time I had heard this, my introduction to the manticore was from Harry Potter. That's the first time I heard about it. But isn't it it's in D&D too, right?
It is. It's a very tough monster to fight in D&D.
Oh gosh.
And it's got pretty much all of the stuff, except it also has a set of bat wings affixed to its body.
Oh gosh. This is intense.
But yeah, this kind of comes from like a lot of those old world monsters where you just take a bunch of things and combine it together.
You smash it as the boom monster.
Yep.
This is the Monster Factory.
It's thought that the Persian root word, which is apparently manticorus or something like that. It didn't really sound Persian to me, but
maybe it's Old Persian. What I'm speaking, what my mom and I currently speak is like modern day Persian. That's very heavily influenced by Arabic language.
Well, this would be Middle Persian.
This might be Middle Persian.
But the original verbiage, apparently roughly translates to man-eater. And one of the things it was known for was its cleverness and its ability to hunt people.
So it has intelligence then.
It's very smart. It's thought that it could understand speech and you can kind of speak itself, but it had a voice like a trumpet. So often the sound of music was kind of evidence that it might be near. It was known for one particular style of its hunting was it would use its human head and hide the rest of its, crazy chimera body in order to like lure people over to it.
I'm just imagining this giant bush and this head sticks. And I was like, "Hey kid, how you doing?"
Basically, except replace the bush with like some tall grass. But yeah, this was basically your kind of creature that was meant to keep you from wandering off too far.
Don't follow weird people.
Don't trust strangers. It might be a manticore. Don't run off just because you hear music. It might be the manticore.
Man.
One other ability I found kind of interesting is in some stories, it can take those little porcupine quills that are coated in venom and shoot them like an arrow.
I was really worried you would say that. Oh, gosh.
Yep, it can launch those things.
How far can it launch? Or does it say?
It didn't say how far, but they did describe it like an arrow. So imagine how far that can go.
So,
yeah.
Ooh.
And they were all like completely coated in poison that would kill a man immediately. Another interesting thing I found out, apparently manticores and elephants have kind of a weird rivalry. Apparently the strongest manticore can't face down an elephant.
Whoa.
Which I found kind of interesting.
That is pretty cool.
Considering it's, got human intelligence and poison and all that.
It's an elephant.
Just can't beat up an elephant.
Elephants just have two big old tusks and a serious anger issue when you set them off.
But apparently, like, the oldest, most debilitated elephant can kill the mightiest of manticores.
Now let me ask you this, because we're on the subject of manticores and elephants. I specifically remember that Salm, Tur, and Iraj could take down an elephant when they were just toddlers. Oh. Could they take down a manticore?
More than likely.
Ah.
They are pretty divine.
That's pretty cool. If only the two of them stopped being such jerks and didn't kill the other one, maybe they could have taken down a manticore together.
Yeah, we don't get those kind of stories about how they probably went on adventures and stuff.
Right? That would have been so cool. Somebody write me this fan fiction.
But yeah, that's what I've got for this week.
Well, that was really cool. I kind of hope that we'll learn more. If you find out about any other Persian creatures and stuff, or...
I'll tell you who is a good source to hear about on all of this.
Who?
Our friend Laura at Plumas de Simur.
Oh, yeah, she does. I think she does have a video on it. Doesn't she?
She did in fact do a stream, and that was part of the inspiration behind doing this for the episode.
All right, listeners, if you want to keep up with us, you can follow us on Twitter at MazanderCast. That's MazanderCast. We're going to announce the next episode through our Twitter, so spread the word.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions on current and future episodes. If there's any topics you'd like us to cover or stories you want to share with us, then email us at MazanderCast@gmail.com.
Oh, and that includes any horror stories or Persian mythological, like, scary stories.
I want to hear your ghost stories, especially if you heard them from your family.
Yes. Or, any of them at all. I want to hear the superstitious stuff. Special thanks to Dr. Lynn for our cover art. Check out more of her work at LorraineLynn.com. That's LorraineLIN.com.
Thanks so much for joining us on this podcast. We hope you'll stick around for more in the future.
And as always, we hope you have good thoughts.
Good words.
And good deeds.
Khodafis.